Welcome back to the Bill and Doug Show. Doug Lesmerises solo for Rants here on a Monday. We're going to talk about some quarterback development issues, I think, in the Big Ten. We're going to talk a little bit at the end about what's going on at Auburn. But we're going to start with the conference of lunacy and delusion that is the SEC. And I would just like to remind you that there are 16 programs in the SEC. 9 of those programs are currently ranked in the AP Top 25. 4 of those programs have fired their head coach this season. There are only 3 teams in the SEC that are not either ranked or fired their coach. Those 3 teams are Mississippi State, and that's kind of just because Jeff Lebby just got there. Fairly new. Plus, they beat Arizona State in the preseason. Everybody was so excited. Kentucky, which kind of wants to fire Mark Stoops, and South Carolina, which has not fired head coach Shane Beamer, but did fire its offensive coordinator this week. So it's like half a firing, and we'll get into that. So in this conference of lunacy and delusion, where I almost think of course they take pride in the puffed up fraudulence that is their 9 ranked teams. I think they almost take pride in firing 1/4 of their coaches this season. A sick, twisted, we demand excellence to spite ourselves. We set our programs on fire to show how much we care. How much do you care? I care so much, I burn my house down. That's how much I care. That's SEC life. So I would like to play a game based on the fact that they have 9 ranked teams and 4 fired coach teams that is called, did my flaming pile of hot garbage program that fired its coach almost beat a ranked team? And in this game, we have one instance where it actually happened. Florida, which has fired Billy Napier this year, did beat Texas, and Texas is currently ranked number 13. Do you know how many other instances there are where the hot garbage fired your coach program almost beat the ranked team? Is it 4? Is it 7? It's 10. And it has happened to every single team in the SEC that is ranked. All 9 ranked teams have almost lost, or actually lost, to a team that's fired its coach except one. The one team that has not almost lost to a team that fired its coach is Alabama. And do you know why that is? It's because Alabama hasn't played any of those teams. Alabama hasn't played Auburn, Florida, Arkansas, or LSU, so they haven't had the chance to almost lose to a program that fired its coach, but they did almost lose to South Carolina, which then fired offensive coordinator Mike Shula. So you get half a point, Alabama. I don't want you to feel left out. And you do have the opportunity to lose to a team that fired its coach still this season because you still play LSU and Auburn. So we don't want Alabama to be left out of the party. Let's play the game. Did my ranked SEC program almost lose to a pile of hot garbage that fired its coach? We'll start with the LSU instances. LSU against Ole Miss. LSU fired Brian Kelly. Ole Miss is number 7. LSU trailed Ole Miss 17-13 entering the fourth quarter. Ole Miss eventually won 24-19. And I just want to make a point here about does this apply elsewhere? Where, for instance, Ohio State being ahead of Penn State, which fired James Franklin, only 17-14 going into the second half. But then Ohio State scored on its first 2 drives of the second half, scored 2 touchdowns to make that a 3-score lead with 57-yard passes to Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. That's not what I'm talking about. Just like being close at halftime is not the threshold here. Almost all these instances you are in the fourth quarter and in actual danger of losing. And the other instance that maybe could almost apply here to the Big Ten is Penn State almost beat Iowa. That was a 1-point game in Kinnick Stadium. But guess what? Iowa's not ranked because they're 6-2 and they're 26th in the AP poll because people refuse to rank teams in the middle of the Big Ten because they're taking up all the spots with the SEC. So you've done this to yourself. Continuing the game, did my ranked SEC team almost lose to a pile of hot flaming garbage that fired its coach? 24-19, Ole Miss beat LSU. That was a 17-13 game, Ole Miss entering the fourth quarter. That's close. If you're my definition is like Fourth quarter, pretty late in the game. Is there a situation where the bad team has the ball with a chance to take the lead? Because in that situation, you're in danger of losing. Because if a safety falls down, if you get a goofy play, if they run a trick play that works, all of a sudden you're down, right? So, yes, the currently ranked teams that found ways to win, you do get credit for that. But I also would like to acknowledge how close you were to losing. And we're just not dealing with that circumstance with teams like Ohio State or Indiana or Oregon, where they are that close, right on the edge of losing to a program that is a flaming pile of hot garbage that fired its coach. Example number one, Ole Miss LSU. Example number two, Vanderbilt beat LSU 31-24. Vanderbilt is now number 15. The Vanderbilt lead got cut down to 31-24 early in the fourth quarter, and LSU had 2 possessions down a score and didn't get a first down. So, okay, we'll credit the Vandy defense, but also maybe if LSU wasn't a flaming pile of hard garbage that fired its coach, it would have been able to get a first down on one of those drives and score to tie the game. That's number 2. I'm not counting the LSU Texas A&M game where LSU led number 3 Texas A&M at halftime 18-15, because I'm not counting that. I'm being so fair here. But then Texas A&M took over in the second half and won 49-25. So that's a real credit to a Texas A&M team that is clearly the best team in the SEC and actually took care of business in the second half. Just because you're trailing at halftime, Texas A&M, I'm not holding that against you. I want to be clear that doesn't count. Two examples. Example number 3, Florida actually beat Texas 29-21. All right, so that's number 3. Number 4, Texas A&M beat Florida 34-17. It was 24-17 in the fourth quarter. Texas A&M and Florida had the ball and got stopped on downs. So Florida had the ball in the fourth quarter, down 1 score. That counts. You were in danger of losing Texas A&M. Florida, Georgia. That's just past weekend. Georgia won. Georgia's number 5 in the country. They beat Florida, a flaming hot pile of garbage that fired its coach, 24-20. Florida led 20-17 before Georgia scored with under 5 minutes left, took the lead. And then with 3 minutes left, Florida threw a deep ball down the field on third down that was caught, but the officials said it wasn't caught. And everybody in America who has gone back and looked at the replays acknowledges that was clearly a catch by Florida. If that's a completion down the field, Florida's in decent position to try to score a touchdown and win the game. But there's a little bit of a running thread here, which is that coincidentally, SEC officials keep making decisions to keep the ranked teams afloat. I don't know how it happens. And they're actually contributing to the flaming hot piles of garbage firing their coaches because they keep ruling against them and keeping the ranked teams alive. I'm sure it's a coincidence. So that's 3 more. That's 2 LSU games and it's 3 Florida games that qualify. Let's go to Auburn. Auburn, Oklahoma. Oklahoma beat Auburn 24-17. Auburn scored a touchdown with 7 minutes left to go up 17-16. Oklahoma responded with the score. So again, in the fourth quarter, halfway through the fourth quarter, Auburn's ahead. This is also a game where Oklahoma scored a touchdown on a trick play where they acted like a guy was running off the field. And then they threw him a touchdown pass that was wide open. That's illegal. And after the fact, SEC conference officials put out a statement that said that should have been called a penalty on Oklahoma and not a touchdown. That happened in a game that Oklahoma, which is ranked 11th, won by 1 score over the flaming hot pile of garbage that is Auburn that fired its coach Hugh Freeze this past weekend. Okay? That's another one. Auburn, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, number 3 in the country, beat Auburn, a flaming hot pile of garbage, 16-10. Auburn cut it to 13-10 with 10 minutes left. Auburn had 3 more possessions and didn't get a first down. So credit to the Texas A&M defense, of course. Extreme incompetence by Auburn and supposed offensive mastermind Hugh Freeze to not be able to get a first down when you're down by 3 in the fourth quarter and you have 3 possessions and you can't get a first down. Of course, the kind of incompetence that gets you fired. That's another example. Texas A&M won 16-10. Auburn, Georgia. Georgia, number 5 in the country. Auburn, a flaming hot pile of garbage that fired its coach. Auburn led 10-0 and should have gone up 17-0 late in the first half. Auburn scored a touchdown, jumped over the pile, ball's clearly over the goal line. The officials rule that it's not and that it gets punched out before it gets over the goal line, and it's a fumble. Later in the game, when Georgia's up 3, Kirby Smart goes like this and makes a T with his hands. Kirby, that's a T, in case you're wondering what letter that is in the alphabet. I'm going to tell Kirby, make tea with hands, Kirby. And he called a timeout, and the officials were like, Kirby said, I was just clapping. And the official said, you're right. And what happened after that game that Georgia won 20-10 over flaming hot pile of garbage Auburn, SEC suspended the referee for the rest of the season because the officiating was so bad. So Auburn should have gone up 17-0 in that game. Once that touchdown was denied, Auburn completely collapsed because they're an incompetent football team. But if that's ruled a touchdown, they have a great chance to beat Georgia there. That's another one. Missouri, number 19 in the country currently. Auburn took them to double overtime, and Missouri won 23-17. Again, Auburn, that stinks, fired its coach. Couple more. Arkansas has fired Sam Pittman. Arkansas lost to Ole Miss 41-35. Arkansas was driving for the winning score, down 6, driving for the winning score, fumbled in the final 2 minutes around the 25-yard line, around the Ole Miss 25-yard line. So, like, you're driving for the winning score and you blow it. And then Arkansas, Tennessee. Tennessee is completely overranked at number 23. They have 3 losses. They haven't beaten anybody. Arkansas, Tennessee. Tennessee won 34-31. Arkansas scored late. So, like it scored late to make it a 3-point game, but then Tennessee did have to make a first down to run out the clock. So if Arkansas had been able to get a stop there, they would have a chance to get the ball back down 3. So, like, credit to Tennessee for getting the first down to run out the clock, but also, like, you're in that spot where in the final minutes, you are at risk to have to punt the ball back to another team, to your opponent, and then they would have a chance to drive to tie or win. And I also am not counting the 45-42 Texas A&M win over Arkansas. That was 21-20 Texas A&M at the half. Arkansas scored in the final seconds to cut it to 3, so it really was a 10-point game. Again, I am not counting that. On the scoreboard, you might say that Texas A&M, the number 3 team in the country, only beat Arkansas by 3, and Arkansas has fired head coach Sam Pittman. I'm not counting that because I want to be fair. So here are the 11 examples of a flaming pile of hot garbage that fired its coach, either beating or almost beating a currently ranked SEC team. Ole Miss LSU, Vanderbilt LSU, when Florida actually beat Texas, Texas A&M Florida, Georgia Florida, that's 5, Oklahoma Auburn 6, Texas A&M Auburn 7, Georgia Auburn 8, Missouri Auburn 9, Ole Miss Arkansas 10, Tennessee Arkansas 11. And all I can say about that is the SEC is filled with puffed up frauds. Because if you, in good conscience, point to these are undeniable situations. Was this ranked team in danger of losing to a flaming hot pile of garbage that fired its coach late in the game? Yes, Doug, it's a fact. Yes. And I was nice on 2. It's 11 at the fewest. 1 actual win and 10 close calls. And if you take that and say, oh, that's just proof of how deep the SEC is, brother, you're a delusional, ding-dong, moron, honk. If that is your sign of strength, then why are you firing your coaches? If it is a sign of strength, that's life in the SEC, man. Someone's got to lose. Just NFL players all over the place, man. It's like a pro league down here, man. I'm doing a California surfer accent. Are there California surfers who follow the SEC? Oh, man. I'm so excited for Vandy, Tennessee, man. My God. Who is that person? Please point that person out to me. Get on your surfboard and paddle out into the ocean. If that is strength, then you're lunatics for firing your coaches. Because, man, this is just life in the SEC. This is how good we are. Then why are you firing people? You're firing them for ineptitude. You're firing them for incompetence. You're firing them for failures of leadership. You're firing them for failures in clutch situations. You're firing them for not seizing opportunities. You're firing them for losing. And then you're going to call that great depth. You're delusional lunatics. Because this is proof. You can't have it both ways. It's so bad you're fired, but yet those wins for the ranked teams are so good you're awesome. You can't have it both ways, which of course, like they would say they could, because they are delusional lunatics. Okay, that's rant number 1. Rant number 2, and I do wind up talking about the SEC here because the SEC's delusional lunacy is interesting. And sometimes the baseline competence in the Big Ten right now is not exciting enough for discussion. So like mostly because rants here, it's hard to rant about success. It's like, I'll tell you what, I am tired of Indiana winning by 40. Doesn't really move the needle, does it? Kurt Cignetti, if you're making $11.6 million a year now, why don't you win by 70? Can you imagine Kurt Cignetti dorking around like these SEC ranked teams do? Can you imagine Kurt Cignetti dorking around like that? Kurt Cignetti in Indiana almost lost at Iowa. That's true. That's why Iowa should fire its coach, right? Oh, wait, Iowa's 6-2 and a really good team, and actually Indiana finding a way to win that game. Okay. Like I didn't list Bama stuff here. I've been on Bama. I didn't list Bama stuff here because Bama isn't beating the teams that fired its coach. And so again, I don't want to leave out South Carolina, but like I focused on actually firing your coach. There's a couple examples here. South Carolina lost to Missouri 29-20. South Carolina led entering the fourth quarter, and then South Carolina Bama. South Carolina was up 22-14 in the fourth quarter, gave up a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to Alabama then to tie. Then South Carolina got the ball back, had a chance to march for the game-winning score, instead fumbled on like the second play when the officials let the play continue, and Lenora Sellers' forward progress was probably stopped, and it should have been whistled dead, and it shouldn't have been ruled a fumble, but they did rule it a fumble, and it set up Alabama for the winning score. So that's fire your offensive coordinator. Not quite firing your coach, but I'm not even counting that. But this is the point. Like, if you want to throw Indiana, Iowa out there, well, Iowa's not so terrible that they fired their coach. Iowa's a very good competitive football team that took Indiana to the wire. So, like, that's the kind of stuff. I'm not counting Alabama, Tennessee in here, right? I'm only counting your, I don't want to say it again. I wish I could, off the top of my head, figure out the abbreviation for flaming hot pile of garbage that fired its coach. Let's talk about failures of quarterback development in the Big Ten. Terrible news. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska out for the season. Broken fibula suffered against USC. A disappointing end, just like for Drew Aller. Injured out for the year at Penn State. Similar plays, like hit trying to make a play, goes down, leg gets twisted a weird way, and that's it. Drew Aller was at the Ohio State-Penn State game over the weekend on a scooter, carting around with his ankle up, foot in a boot. So, like, best of luck to Drew Aller and Dylan Raiola. We don't want anyone to get help. We don't want anyone to get hurt. We don't. Big Ten, SEC, like, these are young men who are playing a violent sport, and we want them to be healthy, to be able to go after their dreams and just be healthy, right? So, best of luck to those guys. But it is a disappointing kind of end for three different Big Ten quarterbacks that I think were really important to the conference this year. And it was three quarterbacks who were ranked pretty high in recruiting and were all returning starters and really needed to elevate. It was Drew Aller at Penn State, was the number 4 overall quarterback according to the 24/7 composite rankings, number 4 quarterback in the 2022 class. Dylan Raiola, the number 3 quarterback in the 2024 class, and Aiden Childs at Michigan State, who was the number 13 quarterback in the 2023 class, recruited to Oregon State by Jonathan Smith, followed Jonathan Smith, Michigan State. Childs is not hurt, but he was benched. Jonathan Smith benched him. And there are a bunch of guys who were new starters to their programs, like the 4 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten right now. Julian Sand at Ohio State, first-year starter. Dante Moore at Oregon, first-year starter at Oregon, had started 4 games at UCLA. Fernando Mendoza, first-year starter at Indiana, had been a 2-year starter at Cal. Damon Williams Jr., first-year starter at Washington, second-year player, just like Julian Sand. Those 4 quarterbacks, like Sayan, obviously ranked very high, number 1 quarterback in the recruiting class of 2024. Dante Moore, the number 3 quarterback in the recruiting class of 2023. Damon Williams Jr., number 12 in 2024. These are success stories. And those 4 quarterbacks, PFF stats, combined 45 big-time throws, 16 turnover-worthy plays. But this is sort of like a lot of the new guys coming in that maybe we weren't quite sure about because we hadn't seen it at their schools. You might have had a good idea about Fernando Mendoza, but the other guys, like, it's like, okay, there's a recruiting pedigree here, but you're not sure about it. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska started last year as a true freshman. Aiden Childs started last year as a second-year player. Drew Aller, this is his third year as a starter at Penn State, fourth-year player, third-year starter. Those were the guys that you needed to see a leap from, and it didn't happen. Those three quarterbacks combined, 17 big-time throws, 24 turnover-worthy plays. Raiola has, I think, 11 turnover-worthy plays. And I do it is a reminder of when you see the success at Washington, and I do think that Washington remains in the playoff mix. Jed Fish, that offense, quarterback development, Damon Williams Jr. followed Jed Fish from Arizona. They're very connected. Job well done by Jed Fish, job well done by Damon Williams Jr. to have developed to this point as a second-year college football player and be playing the way he is. He's driving Washington's success. Dante Moore sat out last year at Oregon as not sat out, but was a backup quarterback learning. Will Stein, the offensive coordinator there. Dan Lanning, the program he's running there. Credit to Dante Moore after transferring from UCLA. Credit to the development, Will Stein and everybody involved with that at Oregon. Developing quarterback play, having an offense, a scheme, a plan that sets up your quarterbacks to succeed. We saw it with Bo Nix. We saw it with Dylan Gabriel. I think Dante Moore is an even more dangerous quarterback than that. You see that with Dante Moore this year. Congratulations to those people. Indiana, Mike Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, right? They lost their, Tino Sanseri, their quarterbacks guy, went to UCLA and was like, is that going to be an issue? It's not. Fernando Mendoza elevating past what Curtis Rourke did a year ago. Job well done by everybody at Indiana to set Fernando Mendoza up for success. Fernando Mendoza at a new place to succeed so quickly. And Ohio State, Julian Sayin, quarterbacks coach Billy Fessler, offensive coordinator Brian Hartline, Ryan Day as a quarterback guru as the head coach, Julian Sayin being ready for this as a second-year college football player. Quarterback development, it's not just the quarterback recruiting. The quarterback development is what's driving the best Big Ten teams and, frankly, a lot of the best teams in the country. And it's not there at Michigan State, Penn State, and Nebraska right now. Raiola's had some decent games, but I think there's still some stuff there with pocket awareness, being smart with the ball, the boom bust balance. I think they needed to tamp down some of the baby Mahomes kind of stuff. Maybe coach him a little harder. I don't know, but I thought there was more of a leap there for Dylan Raiola. We hope he gets healthy and can come back next year for Nebraska. Aiden Childs, I don't know. I haven't watched every Michigan State snap to know where that went south. But that idea that Jonathan Smith, who's a quarterback guy, and Aiden Childs was his guy, and he follows you to a new school, and you end up benching him. Michigan State hasn't won a Big Ten game this year. That's a failure of development. Nick Marsh is a great young receiver, but are you doing the things with the system, with the receivers, with the offensive line, with just helping Aiden Childs become better? That's a failure of development, because that was a talented guy. That was a big get in recruiting, but there's no point in making a get in recruiting if you don't develop it. And it's the greatest failure at Penn State of this era. When you run down the list of why James Franklin was fired, the failure to develop quarterbacks, whether it's Sean Clifford, whether it's Drew Aller, that you bring in a guy and they never take that final step to really make you a national title contender. It's just a reminder of it's not optional. And if you're a defensive head coach, Dan Lanning's a defensive head coach. And they had Kenny Dillingham there as the offensive coordinator. And the moment they lost him, they got Will Stein, and look what they're still doing. You have to be aggressive. You have to make great hires. You have to prioritize it. You can't have your friend be your quarterback's coach. You have to, it's gold. It's gold that it's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's like you're in the kiln. You're not working with clay. You're working with gold. If you are not prioritizing quarterback development, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. So I think Michigan State, Nebraska, and Penn State didn't do well enough in quarterback development this year. It's hurting them. Neither Penn State nor Michigan State has won a Big Ten game. Nebraska's won 3, but they beat Maryland, Northwestern, and Michigan State. They didn't win any of the gotta-have-it games. They got blown out at Minnesota. They lost at home to USC and Michigan. They needed to elevate past that. So for head coaches who are hiring OCs, you can't settle. For schools that are hiring head coaches, I think you need to think offensive philosophy, and you need to think quarterback development, because it's not working out at 3 schools where I think coming into the year, you really thought Drew Aller, Dylan Raiola, and Aiden Childs had a chance, a chance to be 3 of the most important guys in the Big Ten. And here we are. And then the last one is Auburn fired Hugh Freeze. Check his phone, man. Check Hugh's phone. You can Google that. Hugh Freeze had a little problem with his phone back in the day when he was a head coach at Ole Miss, and they hired him at Auburn anyway. And what they have done now is elevated defensive coordinator DJ Durkin to head coach. And this is just one of those things where it's just like the standards in the SEC are just lower. You just have lower standards in the SEC. Ball first, everything else second. And DJ Durkin, his issues came in the Big Ten, and issues is not the right word. Tragedy. The death of Jordan McNair while DJ Durkin was the head coach. Just a terrible, horrible tragedy. It occurred during a workout at Maryland. Rick Court was the strength coach there who was overseeing things, but DJ Durkin was the head coach, and stuff stops with him. They did an investigation at Maryland after the death of Jordan McNair. They found an 8-person commission, found that Durkin was partially responsible for the way Court conducted his business as the strength coach. They didn't call it a toxic culture at Maryland, but they did find some examples of bullying. Maryland ridiculously initially reinstated Durkin, and then there was a giant backlash, and they fired him a day later. And he's worked in the SEC since then. So he was like in the NFL briefly as a consultant, but then he's had full-time employment in the SEC. He was the DC at Texas A&M, co-defensive coordinator. He was the defensive coordinator before that at Ole Miss, and now he's a defensive coordinator at Auburn, and they made him the interim head coach. And so he was not solely responsible for this terrible, terrible, terrible tragedy. The University of Maryland athletic department, they found there were other shortcomings there responsible for that. Like that, it's Maryland allowed this to happen. Horrible. But DJ Durkin is now in charge at Auburn. And so should a coach, now Brian Kelly also was involved, the death of a student, worker, right? A staffer who was up on a tall structure videotaping, I believe, during a weather storm, and the wind blew the tower over, and the student was tragically killed. And Brian Kelly was allowed to keep coaching at Notre Dame. He was hired to run things at LSU. Again, I think you can certainly question that. But I should somebody involved in something like that never work in college football again. And I do still draw a distinction between the NFL and college, because you are still dealing with young people who are being sent off to a place by their parents. And as a football coach, you are still somewhat responsible for their well-being in a way that you are not responsible for the well-being of NFL millionaires who are grown men. It's not the same thing. So you'll notice, has the Big Ten hired DJ Durkin as a defensive coordinator since that happened? No, the SEC did. Should those schools not have hired him? I certainly would have asked a million questions about it. But there's a difference between being a coordinator and now being the guy in charge in the building, even on an interim basis. And it is absolutely, I believe, irresponsible for Auburn to put DJ Durkin in charge of the health, the welfare, and well-being of young people when he has this in his past. I think it should make him unhireable for any head coach position. And they could have made somebody else the interim. Make someone else the interim. Penn State didn't make Andy Koltelnicki or Jim Knowles the interim. You don't have to make it a coordinator. Make it somebody else. And then DJ Durkin, you're in charge of the defense. You're scheming it up. You're leading meetings, but you are not the person responsible for the young people. But I have seen some SEC stories, at least bring it up. I don't know if it's going to be asked about in news conferences. I mean, obviously, I asked about Ohio State hiring Matt Patricia because he had an accusation from in his 20s before he was a football coach that no charges were ever filed, and he had been vetted and had gone through the process of looking into this accusation of potential sexual misconduct, but no charges were ever filed, right? And it was away from a football field. It was in his personal life. And then he went on after that to a 30-year career in the NFL. But I did think hiring him to a position of somewhat authority as defensive coordinator at Ohio State, you had to ask about it. And Ohio State said they looked into it. They vetted it, right? They were ready for that question. They understand that. If Matt Patricia had been hired by Ohio State as a head coach, I would have asked more questions about it, because now you are ultimately responsible. But DJ Durkin's thing is it's direct. It was a football workout where players were pushed to the brink and afraid to say something. And as a result, a player who went into distress during that workout did not get in an ambulance for more than an hour, and it led to his death. So this is directly football related. And DJ Durkin oversaw that program, and now currently he is overseeing the Auburn football program. And I just don't know. I just wonder if that would happen in any other conference other than the SEC. All right, those are our rants for a Monday. I'm wearing my Roback quarter zip today. Can you see this? High quality, stylish. It hangs good, right? Like it hangs. Look, it hangs well. It's a Roback quarter zip, RHOBACK.com. We'll get you 20% off your first order if you go check it out. You put in the code BAD20. Go to Roback.com, look around. They have like sort of the stuff like this that's not football themed, but in the game day collection, if you click on game day, they have stuff that's themed to your favorite team too, right? So just like imagine this with like a little bit of a subtle stripe or a logo somewhere, but it's still like the high quality, not too heavy, but still warm quarter zip that looks really good. And we'll get you 20% off. Roback.com, RHOBACK.com. Use the code BAD20. We'll have playoff picks. We'll have like what we think the bracket's going to be on Tuesday night, and then we'll react to what the first actual playoff committee rankings are on Tuesday night. So don't expect that show until after everything is announced on Tuesday. And also on Monday, make sure you check out Around the Shoe. Two great guests, Joe Nugent and Jared Smalley, both from NBC4. TV guys in Columbus talking with me, talking with Bill Landis about 5 quick hit Ohio State topics. Later in the week, our Ohio State picks, our national picks, post-game shows. You guys know what we do. We're appreciative of you joining us here. Like, subscribe, tell a friend about the Bill and Doug Show. For now, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Rants on the Bill and Doug Show.